A thief and her ex-boyfriend set out to steal an emerald-encrusted dagger from a well-guarded museum in Istanbul, but her plan runs into a snag when the patsy they hired to unwittingly smuggle their equipment across the border is caught and forced to act as a spy against his employers in the 1963 heist film Topkapi. And that's the film we're dusting off this week on Movie Bones.
I'm going to have it. It's going to be mine. Oh, I didn't finish introducing myself. I am a thief. Honest.
Well, she doesn't beat around the bush, does she, right, Ryan? Right to the point.
Oh, no. She is, that whole entire movie, that's how she is.
It's like, and the movie has this really abrupt start, and it ends just as abruptly, but... and so, folks, we hope you've watched today's movie alongside us. But if you haven't, we're talking about Topkapi. And I think I'm saying that right. I'm going to guess that I'm probably wrong, but it's the best I can do. It's actually a real-world historical palace in Istanbul turned into a museum. But for the purposes of this film, it's the target of a heist. The brainchild of Elizabeth Lipp. Well, it's a funny name for an interesting character. She's a professional thief and a nymphomaniac who, as you just heard, doesn't leave the audience guessing as to her motives for stealing the renowned emerald-encrusted dagger that she's after. She just really wants it, like a whole lot. But to get it, she needs to team up with a former lover and mentor named Walter Harper, played by Maximilian Schell. And part of his plan relies on a dupe, which they find in Arthur Simon Simpson. He's a small-time con artist played by the great Peter Ustinov, and have him take the risk of ferrying their equipment across the Turkish border, figuring that if he gets caught, they'll never see him again, and they'll only be out a few weapons and equipment. Of course, he is caught, but rather than just send him to prison, the Turkish authorities conscript him and, have him spy on his employers. And that kind of sets up the tension for the first, half of the film or so. And I think that one of the things that ran through my head while reflecting on the movie, Ryan, was that what you said last week about not quite knowing what tone the film would be played in. And I don't know if anyone really could guess it based on, it's like, oh, what do you think of a heist film? I don't think anyone would guess this. It's trippy. It starts out as really trippy, and it settles into something that's actually pretty chill and laid back.
Yeah. I would say that it's definitely in that genre of comedy with certain aspects of the movie that in that trippiness feels very cartoonish.
Mm-hmm.
Do you understand you get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, for instance, the guy that hurts his hands in the movie. And, those comically oversized hand rags that he's got on. Or hand wraps, not rags. And, that even scene where he hurts himself. And now I'm getting a little bit farther into the movie. And it's because of that trippiness. This is very much a movie that's made in the 60s, folks.
Oh, yeah. You could tell it's got that, almost like someone was on something, just for certain parts of it, It's indulgent in a certain way. It's got the flashing lights. And the intro starts you right out with that, too. I didn't even know if I was looking at a carnival, if I was looking at, what's that 1950s or 60s anti-drug thing? It's pretty famous. Is it Reefer Madness? It's basically
I know
Reefer Madness. It's like, is that what I'm watching here? Because this is trippy stuff, and it's like, and then you're being directly addressed by Elizabeth, this character you don't even know who she is yet, and she's just addressing you face to face and confessing her desire for this jewel, and it takes its time in getting set up and started in a way that it's like I'm not checking out of the movie, but it feels like this is indulgent. You know what I mean? That early stuff. Yeah.
And not, again, I'd agree with you not checking out of the movie, but I will say that did cause some problems for me. We already kind of mentioned our main character is not the characters that we think are supposed to be the main characters.
Yes.
And I think a little bit of that is the setup of the movies. Last week, we gave what the small plot was. It's these two ex-lovers that come back together to build a crew for a heist.
Yeah.
And you thought that whole ex-lovers would be more of an ordeal in the movie.
Yeah.
And it's not. And when we say ex-lovers, really we're just saying two people that had a fling and they enjoyed their fling, so they kind of brought it back together.
Yeah. It has the shortest arc in film history, if you want to think of it that way. It's like, I read that off of like a synopsis because I haven't actually written the intro for the movie yet today. And even today, it's like I started out kind of still in that same mental groove, even though I'd watched the film. It's like, you know what? They're not the central part of the movie, but I still started the intro as if they were, just because I had kind of convinced myself of that.
But the movie at the very beginning makes you think that they're the main characters.
Yes, it does.
And I don't know if it's doing that on purpose or not, because our main character is Arthur Simpson.
Yeah, he doesn't show up until like 15, 20 minutes in, you know,
Yeah.
and they've already actually picked up like other members, like even more minor members of the team that they're putting together. I mean, people who almost have almost no dialogue for the rest of the film. They have like a sparse one here or there. And I did some research on this because looking into the Wikipedia page, it's like, this is based on a novel. I think it's the same name, but of the same name, I think. But the novel is taken from the point of view entirely, apparently, of Arthur Simon Simpson. And so, yeah, if you start the film there, like where he gets introduced, where he's just encountering these people who are looking to pick him up for a small job, and he gets pulled in deeper, well, that seems to be the natural entry point, doesn't it? But I think maybe 60s kind of, maybe some drugs involved, saying maybe we can do something more creative with that. But it's like, no, that was good.
Yeah, he should have been the POV in this whole entire movie.
Yeah.
And I want to make this very clear, folks. His character is amazing. Like, the way he plays the character is just, it's perfect. Like,
He's Peter Ustinov.
Perfect. Yeah. It's just so good. His portrayal is so good. Like, I won't lie to you. Like, there are certain parts of this, his character, like, is so good that there's no reason to bring in these other characters as what appears to be main characters.
Yeah.
Like, he's funny. This is the part of the comedy parts I'm talking about. Like, most of the stuff he does is funny. He actually does a really good job of making you feel like there's some like legit danger at times. And I'll give credit to where credit's due. The other characters do, like, some of the other characters do that as well. Because there's this one cool scene, and I'll talk about that scene at the very end but like when we're in our review and everything. But there's this one scene, like there's this lot of tension in this one scene because it's a heist film. So think about what tension might be and everything, especially when you're committing the heist itself.
Yeah.
And he does a good job. Like, he does a good job of mixing comedy and tension, and it draws you in. Like, how is this character gonna survive this?
Yes.
And so in so many different ways, and it's just it makes it a lot more interesting to watch. And this is coming from someone who at times, like, heist films can be hit or miss for me because, like, that's just kind of a genre that I'm not, super into. It's not to say they aren't good, but I'm just not super duper into it. So.
But what about Turkish security?
What about Turkish security?
Well, they don't know about the museum. They think you're terrorists.
Who thinks so? Who?
Who? Well, it's your own fault. Why'd you get me to do all your dirty work? Why'd you get me to bring the arms into the country? Can we go soon?
About 10 minutes. But let's take Julia with us. And the dagger. You're not going to lose your nerve now,
Not a question of losing my nerve. I never had none.
He humanizes it, and it's those moments where it's like everything else that's going on is very kind of, it's plot driven. He has all this very ordinary guy. He's an ordinary con artist, but he's an ordinary guy. He's low level stuff. He's pestering tourists to try to sell them, them fake Greek, artifacts just as they're coming off the docks. So he's looking for a mark, and he's terrible at that even, And so you have a lot of empathy for this, as they say, schmo, or I'd say like a schlub, I love little plot elements like this, where, you have these super smart, heist guys, and it's this lowly guy who actually throws them for their biggest loop, right? Which is the fact that they anticipated that he's either going to show up with the stuff at the other side, and if he doesn't show up, that means he was caught. But they didn't anticipate, the third option, which was he got stopped and caught, and they turned him into a spy for the Turkish authorities.
Speaking of this whole schlub and how they talk about him, I'm not a fan of when movies give you on-the-nose kind of answers or on-the-nose plot points and everything. But there's basically, our two quote unquote, the people that we thought were going to be our main characters. Like when they're talking about Arthur's character, before we were introduced to Arthur and everything, I mean, it's just like right there. They might as well just look at the camera and go, tell you their plan and say, and then nothing can go wrong, with that kind of wink, because you know everything's about to go wrong. That's how they introduce Arthur's character. And like I said, you kind of get away with it because the movie, while we've said before, there's parts of this movie, it's like, what are you trying to be? This movie knows what it is. We just got to figure it out. And so like, it does kind of just wink at you in a way. And it just outright tells you like, okay, this is the guy that's clearly everything's going to go wrong from here on out because they're about to introduce this character. And then you meet Arthur's character, who's, again, he's a brilliant character.
Yeah.
And, you know.
And that whole on the nosy thing, I think I kind of glossed over it because I think I did enjoy, for all the kind of plot uselessness of the guy-girl team there, you know, that's heading this operation, is that, and especially for him, I mean, Maximilian Schell, for me, he's, I've seen him in other stuff, and he can pull off that smooth. He feels like he's in control. And even when he gets angry a little bit, he reins it back pretty quickly. But he's just mostly very calm and collected. Peter Ustinov, I'm pretty sure you've seen him in other things.
I'm sure I have, but I could not, for the life of me, pinpoint what else he's been in.
I think if you've watched Disney films at all as a kid, then you've at least heard his voice. And that's the clue I'll give. But the answer to the clue is, if you guys are familiar with Disney's Robin Hood. Yes?
Oh, yeah. He played Little John, didn't he?
He played, Prince John?
Oh, yeah, that was it.
Prince John, and also King Richard. I did actually, because I looked him up when I was watching the movie. I usually do that. It's when I don't usually look up people and everything. Yeah. But yeah, I looked him up, and I remember when you said, I was like, I know he's been a voice in something. Yeah. But like I said, just a really good actor. Yeah. Probably if he wasn't in the movie, I probably wouldn't feel as the way I do about it, because I just really like that character, and I like the portrayal of that character. I think totally agree on that point. Definitely totally agree. I mean, it would just be a very ordinary and forgettable heist movie, I think, without that. I know you tell me you're trying to figure out where the films are going, especially where there are puzzle pieces to put together. And I was starting to do that myself a little bit with this film. But I was wondering, there's a bit there where they had the human fly character, because they dangle him down over the treasure case, and he's got to make the swap in midair. And he's fumbling with the two daggers, the real one and the fake one. And I wonder if they're going to go do this. Is that if they are going to like go through all this? Because it is, like you said, there's that comedic element there, right? It's like, are they going to swap it out? You know, are they going to swap it out and have them actually for going through all this trouble, and they have the same dagger that they started out with? And then if they catch them with the false dagger, is the false dagger actually going to spare them at the same time and have this kind of a win-loss kind of ending, which I do love those. They didn't do that. And I think that was kind of for me, that was like a missed opportunity. Did you get any of that in what you saw?
I wondered if like things were going to go awry right there. In that part of the film. And I want to say this too, like, I thought how certain things wind up ending, I wasn't a fan. I thought it was a bit of a cop-out, like with the bird and everything. Yeah, I agree. But yeah. I was like, that's too cheap. I thought at one point or another when I was watching it, I was like, something is going to go wrong right here. Something's going to drop. Someone's going to drop. Something's going to happen. And what they're going to have to do is they're going to have to scramble and get away from, the cops and everything. And it didn't happen.
Technically, they pull it off. They do pull it off.
In a heist film, you do kind of want that to happen. I mean, you want the heist to go off. I would say usually most heist films that I've seen, and again, it's not just been a whole lot, like, usually like they're either so good at their plan or there's some kind of double cross or something messes up. And as it messes up, that I thought he just might drop him. Because we've been kind of building up for Arthur to actually just wind up dropping one of them. I really thought it was going to happen. And I was like, I wonder how they're going to get out of this.
I think that having him like succeed at his part, the very last message as a spy, is the note that he leaves in the car. Kind of at the last, almost unconsciously, he leaves it in the car right before they bring him in to the plot because they need him. And that's when things take a turn. But he forgets about that note. And that note it ends up being the thing that comes back and kind of shining the spotlight for the authorities on what's really happening here. So that's a nice duality. I just think they could have taken more advantage of the duality.
Yes.
And it's like, and have them mess up. If they messed up with the dagger, they didn't actually steal it because this is a fake, you know? So yeah, the actual heist itself, I think, is entertaining enough. I could watch this again. If there's the one thing you cannot drop the ball on in a heist movie, it's the heist itself, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
No,
you
agree
have
on
to have that.
That's-
The ending, like I said, it felt just as abrupt as the beginning. It just kind of ends with them in prison, and the same woman is like Elizabeth. She's in there, looking at and she looks out the window and saying she's already dreaming of like stealing. Was it the Romanov diamonds or something in Russia? She's dreaming about that now.
I'm not a fan of that character.
No, I'm not either.
Like, it just kind of annoyed me. Honestly, it wasn't just that whole angle with the two. It's not the actress's fault. It's just the character.
Yeah, she's kind of memorable, but not in a way that I'm going to remember. Someone else, she's different. I guess it's just she's different, and she is unique in some ways. Like I said, nymphomaniac. I mean, she just eats men up and chews them out, kind of a thing. She's the one in charge of this kind of thing, and it's like, wow. I guess it's just not the kind of quirky that shines on me, I guess. That could just be a personal thing, though. Someone else there might get something out of it. But because she's not also central and her character isn't really that well developed, I think overall she was a drop for me. So yeah, this may seem like somewhat ironic given the subject, but for me, this lands squarely in a museum for me. I did not rate it that way for the effect, folks. It is my genuine feeling on the film. I will watch this again from time to time, but it's kind of going to be spaced pretty far apart because I'm going to want to forget some stuff so I can be surprised again by it and the good parts, just to enjoy the good parts again for what they were. It's mild but pleasant entertainment. I'll probably skip through some of the other fluffier parts, like the whole wrestling thing. I didn't even mention the wrestling thing. That kind of really took a whole segment unto itself. It's like, this could have been cut shorter. I didn't talk about this in the review itself, but I was thinking some parts of this film just kind of stretch out too long because it thinks of itself too much as a travel film, I think, in some ways.
Yeah.
That's the impression I got. But I can skip through those parts in the future. It's a capable and effective heist film, even if it's not just like an exceptional one. So how about you, man?
So yeah, I'm going to give it also a belongs in a museum, but for a different reason. If you didn't know, I don't know if you saw this, but that scene, the heist actual scene, is what creates the Mission Impossible franchise.
I had that thought too. It's like I'm getting visions of Tom Cruise here.
The rappelling scene is what inspires Mission Impossible, the TV show, which inspires the movie series. That's the whole reason why we have Mission Impossible. Which Mission Impossible, I love it. It's a fun ride. So
yeah,
I gotta give whatever creates something I love its flowers. So I'm putting this belongs in a museum because without it, you don't. Well, I would say likely without it, you don't have this other stuff.
Would you ever come back to this in a future date? Like you say, oh man, I saw that like years ago.
If it's on, like if someone puts it on in front of me, I don't know. Maybe, yeah. Because I did like that character of Arthur so much.
Yeah.
I don't want to say that the other characters are insufferable, but if it wasn't for Arthur's character, I'd never watch this film again.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just going to depend on, or the character of Arthur. It would just depend on what it's on and why I'm watching it.
Yeah.
And everything. But I do think it belongs in a museum because, like I said, it's trippy. It knows it's trippy. And then this, again, that, he plays such a good character that I would say go watch it, folks.
Yeah. So now's the time when we like to remind the listening audience out there that if you're having fun watching these movies alongside us, and you should be, and hearing our reactions, please do like, subscribe, comment, and of course, follow us on your podcast purveyor of choice. Tell us what you think we got wrong. Maybe nominate some films you'd like us to see do, especially if they're available for free, because this adventure comes with no strings attached, guaranteed. And on that note, Ryan, what are we going to be watching next week?
A more ambitious heist film.
Yeah. And the inspiration, of course, or the original Ocean, was it the original one, right?
Yeah, the original one. This one stars Frank Sinatra, Dean Martin, Sammy Davis Jr., Peter Lawford. The original Ocean's 11 with the original, I think they called themselves the Rat Pack.
The Rat Pack, yes. Minus Jerry Lewis. unless he has a cameo I'm not aware of.
It's a possibility it's a bunch of guys that probably should have kept to their day jobs, but we're going to watch it anyways. But yes, the original Ocean's 11 movie.
Well, folks, that takes care of our end of it this week. Look forward to see you guys next week, and watch the film alongside us and see what you think and leave comments and stuff like that. So, and for Ryan, I'll see you next week. Okay.
See you next week.
All right, folks. Bye-bye.